Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Importance of Mobile Messaging to Drive Action in the Digital Age. I'd like to extend a thank you to everyone joining us today, whether that's live with us now or those of you who are watching on the recorded session. We're really excited to have you all with us today. While we wait for those of you who are still joining the webinar, I'm just going to run through some brief introduction to our fantastic panelists that we have joining us today, and also go over a few bits of housekeeping so that we can keep things running smoothly. As many of you know by now, looking slightly worse for wear because of hairdressers not being open over here in the UK, but I'm Scott Cormack, the Global Event Director here at Reuters Events, and it's my pleasure today to introduce our exciting panel of leaders who are ready to dive into the hot topic we have today. We're lucky to have a mix of some familiar faces and some new faces, so I'll waste no time in introducing. First up on the panel today, we have a Reuters Events debut for Greg Willis, the Customer Success Manager from today's sponsor, Upland Software. Greg has a great deal of experience in today's topic area and has joined us today to share what successes, challenges, and best practice he has seen while helping companies to create successful mobile strategies. We're really excited to have you join us today, Greg, and thank you for bringing your passion to the panel today. Next up is a great friend of ours here at Reuters Events, Anna Guzman, Director of CRM and Customer Engagement over at TGI Fridays. Since joining us for her first time last year, Anna has become a great friend of us, and her and the Fridays team have done some really exciting things in the space of mobile messaging recently, which is why I've asked her to join us today and share her experiences. Without giving too much away just yet, Anna has implemented a mobile messaging campaign that has seen phenomenal success. I'm really excited to have Anna join us today on this panel, so thank you for giving us your time, Anna. And then finally, I'd like to have a warm welcome for Christina Turner, Product Marketing Manager over at Upland Software. Christina was eager to take the reins of the discussion today and will be guiding us through the session with her expertise and passion for mobile messaging strategies and campaigns. For those who don't know, our partners for today, Upland Software, are a leader in cloud-based tools for digital transformation. The Upland Cloud enables thousands of organizations to engage with customers on key digital channels, optimize sales performance, and much more. This is backed up by a commitment which puts the customer at the heart of everything they do. So we're really excited to bring Upland's insights to our discussion today in the forms of Christina and Greg. Before we kick things off, I'd just like to highlight some quick pieces of housekeeping, as I mentioned previously. For those of you who haven't joined us before, I'll provide a quick overview to how to best utilize the Zoom platform. There are over 850 of you joining us today from a host of different countries and exciting brands. Just to name a few: State Farm, Verizon, Google, eBay, Walmart. There really are hundreds more, but in the interest of time, I'll save you and not reel off the whole list. It's really exciting to have all of you joining us today. As such, please do let us know in the chat function that you should see on the bottom of your screens if you have any questions that you would like to pose to the panel today, or even feedback or opinions you have on the discussion. Also, please direct questions to the Q&A function that should be right next to the chat box. This is how we'll put your questions forward to the panel, and we'll be checking that carefully. So any questions, please do leave in there. We do welcome all of your interaction, and we'll be sure to incorporate this throughout the webinar. Finally, today's webinar will be recorded. So if you want to revisit any key pieces from today's discussion, please do keep an eye out for that in your inboxes over the next couple of days. But that's enough for me for now. Christina, I'll hand over to you, and why don't you take us away?
Thanks, Scott. So let's begin by exploring TGI Friday's highly successful SMS launch. Anna, can you walk us through what triggered the desire to implement text messaging, and how do you measure the success of the program?
So we suspected there was a desire from some customers to join us and hear from us on SMS. We didn't know how big was that going to be. So we decided we've been thinking about it for a while. We selected our partner, and we decided to start a program just to see how it went. We saw some other brands in the casual dining and in the quick service industry that were doing it. Not sure how successful those efforts were. What we found is that there were a lot of our customers wanting to communicate through us and to hear from us through SMS. So it's been extremely successful. We started very basic, and we are now up to over 300,000 users in a matter of 4 months.
That's great. Greg, can you walk us through a couple of examples of some successful SMS programs that you've worked on and talk maybe a little bit about how those customers measure success?
Yeah, sure. First of all, Anna, that's amazing. 300,000 subscribers in 4 months is a huge accomplishment. So congrats on that. Yeah, definitely. You know, with Upland, within Upland, we work across a variety of different types of industries, including restaurant, also retail and grocery. And we do measure and run some programs, you know, both marketing and transactional. So, you know, transactional messaging notifications. In terms of successful campaigns, one that comes to mind most recently is a campaign for a larger clothing retailer, just a quick 3-day long mobile campaign where they were using SMS tied with mobile wallet offers to drive purchase for in-store and online and in the US and Canada. And they shared that while their email list was 18 times the size of the SMS list, which is pretty standard and expected. You know, oftentimes we'll know that the SMS channel can be smaller than email. They found that the revenue from the mobile channel made up a third of all revenue for the entire campaign. So that alone speaks volumes to the engagement and loyalty power of the channel, and that's really been, you know, a pillar of success for that particular customer for their SMS channel. A little different type of campaign, you know, obviously with the COVID in the last year and the start of the pandemic really affected a lot of our customers' programs and not only how they were communicating, but really, you know, what channels, you know, they wanted to focus on as stores might have been closed for a period of time, certainly affecting restaurants and switching more to a curbside scenario. But what we did find is that within the grocery space, a particular grocery customer pivoted their marketing offers for SMS over to more real-time messaging about kind of the changes that were happening in store and really wanted to use the channel to directly communicate with that one-to-one communication with their customers and subscribers about changes as things were changing with the pandemic. So it's the changes to store hours, changes to store policies, and because they had collected zip codes for their subscribers, they were also able to target regionally to really let people know at a store specific level what was going on. And finally, you know, in terms of transactional programs, what we've seen in the last year as well is with COVID, you know, as it's changed a lot of customers' businesses, on one of our furniture retail customers actually saw online sales increase as customers were not able to go into stores as often. And as a result of that, the SMS ordering list that we have where people are able to opt into SMS to get notifications about the life cycle of their orders, that list increased exponentially. And it provided an opportunity to them to really say, okay, now we have this huge list, we're seeing really low opt-outs. How do we keep up with the demand? So now we're having conversations about, you know, with the success of this program and just with the high volume that we're seeing over the last year as people, you know, we're trying to get more home office furniture and outdoor furniture. It's an opportunity now to leverage customers that signed up for these transactional messages to convert to marketing offers as well. So a few different examples there, but certainly different types of industries and what we've seen succeed in the last year or so.
Great, thanks. We have actually had a couple of questions come in already that are very related to what we're talking about. So I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit about the KPIs that we're using to track the channel and, you know, what data you have in place to ensure that you have the tools available to evaluate those KPIs. And then also talking a little bit about like the experience and acquisition strategy to growing your subscribers.
Sure. Our acquisition strategy right now is very basic. Since we started the program, we decided to go crawl, walk, run approach. And right now we're only acquiring new users through our Fridays.com website. We have a modal or pop-up that comes up, and users have the way to dismiss it and then try to reconsider it later or dismiss it completely. That approach has worked really well for us. A lot of our users wait until they have some sort of transaction and interaction with us before they decide to subscribe on SMS. So we found that that persistent way to stay there, but not in front of their eyes, is successful for them to sign up. As far as KPIs, we pretty much do what you would do in a regular program, digital channel. We have new users. We measure new users. We measure frequency, and we measure click-through rate, open rates, and click-through rates to our digital properties. We are starting to measure last touch and first touch attribution, which is giving us great insight as to how the SMS channel is really playing out with the rest of our channels in our orchestration strategy. So that is, we're starting to do that. We just kicked that effort out. And it's proving very interesting to see who comes directly from SMS, places an order, and then who places an order a few days later after receiving an SMS, depending on what other campaigns in other channels they have received.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, in terms of KPIs as well, similar to what Anna said, definitely tracking engagement and opt-in, opt-out rates. For a lot of our customers, they'll also be using, especially retail customers, including some kind of tracking in the URLs that might be included in SMS messages to be able to track revenue, or at least to be able to track engagement on a per channel level. So as Anna mentioned, comparing to other digital properties, really what's performing within SMS compared to maybe email or your app. And definitely, in terms of the measurement, what we've seen is measuring the unique clicks or the total clicks to any link is great to really see, what people are engaging most with. Looking at opt-out rates to understand, what maybe isn't resonating, to help you kind of pivot to the right messaging, or certainly, as she mentioned as well, the frequency. So, measuring over time, kind of looking at the time of day or the day of the week, when's the best time to message, and when you're going to see not only the lower opt-out rate, but the highest engagement. And then in addition to that, if you're including any tracking in any URLs you might be including for a marketing program, for example, looking at the revenue and then being able to measure that against your other channels to really prove the value of the channel, or at least understand the value of an individual subscriber. That's definitely, it's an ongoing project with a lot of our customers. And over time, as Anna mentioned, the crawl, walk, run approach it's something that you can tweak, as you're starting to really modify your program and understanding your subscriber behavior.
So along the lines of understanding subscriber behavior, Greg, maybe you can talk a little bit about data collection and the two-way capability with SMS.
Sure, definitely. Yeah. So, SMS obviously being that one-to-one communication. So you're having your subscribers really, when they're signing up to join your SMS list, they're essentially saying, I want to hear directly from you as a brand. So consider them like your brand loyalists, right? Even more so maybe than email, because you're allowing them to, you're basically texting them directly to their device. So they're opening your messages like they would from any of their other contacts. And it's hard to avoid those messages. So you want to make sure that the messaging you're sending is going to be impactful. At the same time, people, of course, are used to responding to those messages. If they might have a question, they might want to, they might have other data that they want you to know about. But it does provide the opportunity to really collect data from your subscribers based on not only what you want to offer them, but really, how you want to target them. So within any program, we can add additional data points to collect, such as zip code is a really common one to collect so that you would know your customer's location. By default, we'll have some basic data points that we have on every subscriber just from their phone number alone. Things like their state based on the area code, their carrier, their time zone, which is really helpful. But if depending on the type of program and how much personalization you might want to include in your program, if you want to address them by name, or certainly, call out location for location specific offers, you can build that out into your flow, and you can include it in a way where within the messaging, you might say, hey, provide us your zip code so we can send you local offers or updates, or, specific new menu items at this particular location. Or maybe, you want to collect their email address and you want to have an opportunity to say, we can opt you into our email list and our SMS program by providing your email address. That's something that we also do with some customers. But the more kind of data that you're able to collect and the way that you engage your customer base by making that conversation personal, will really encourage your subscribers to provide that data, and then they'll be expecting you to respond to them or reach out to them in that more personalized way. And one thing I would mention as well, just on kind of collecting that, there's a lot of different ways that you can request the data, whether that be via the initial opt-in flow or maybe on an ongoing basis. So with a particular message, it's really about seeing over time how your subscribers are responding to what you're asking them. You don't want to ask too much at first. But as you start to understand the behavior, you kind of will understand that comfort level.
So you mentioned this sort of subtly, but it seems as though there's an importance to communicate, at the right time with the right content. And I'm wondering, Anna, if you could talk a little bit about how SMS has been incorporated into your overall marketing strategy.
Sure. So what we gather is that with our customers, they all have different preferences on what channels they want to communicate or hear from us. So the ultimate goal is to be able to understand, without them necessarily telling us explicitly how they want to hear from us, understand what is the most effective method to communicate to them and what is also their preference, right? And based on that, orchestrate your digital channels in a way that it will tackle those first and make efficiencies on the others. So for example, SMS is a very direct channel. Yes, users that are opted in don't mind receiving those communications on SMS, but what if they are also our Fridays app users and email users? So how does it all play together with the rest of the channels that you have? And that could also be most efficient, right? Because SMS is a more expensive channel compared to, sending a push communication directly to the app or sending an email. So for us, is really important understanding that and really integrating the SMS data into the rest of our ecosystem. So we are able to communicate intelligently on a relevant channel, but it also in a way that is most cost effective for us.
So Anna, you just mentioned the difference in expense between SMS and email, and we actually have a question here about the differences between SMS and email, and whether there are any statistics on SMS customer spending versus email spending, any revenue attribution that can be tied back. And I'm wondering, Greg, if there's anything that you can add to that from just generally seeing with multiple different customers how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of cost, you mean, or?
Sure, just your the spending from an email customer versus an SMS customer, or any kind of ROI on SMS versus email.
Yeah, definitely. So, it's, and I go back to kind of saying, we anticipate that an SMS channel, often the audience will be smaller than an email list, as email is usually, much larger and a lot easier to set up or to sign up for. SMS, we do have some more regulations to get through. There's the double opt-in process, and, it's really, you're allowing for that one-to-one connection. So in terms of reaching your customers or subscribers, they're signing up for that. But what we're able to see is because of that more kind of immediate, more personal subscription that people have with you, in the tests that I've done with some customers, we do find that the value per subscriber in SMS can often be a lot higher than email. Again, I go back to that example earlier where, we found that even though the email list for that particular retail customer was 18 times the size of their SMS list, their SMS subscribers accounted for 1/3 of all revenue for the campaign that was run across both channels, both in-store and online. And we've been doing some other tests recently with another retailer, just looking at really the value of the channel and comparing to revenue generated between all of their digital channels, and trying to really understand, which has taken a long time and a lot of testing and analytics has gone into it, but to really understand the true value per subscriber, and they're finding that it's very high, and it really proves that often anybody that's signing up for this real direct communication are going to be your biggest brand evangelists or loyalists, and so the key with any of these programs is to really focus on not just the acquisition piece, but really the retention. And if you have subscribers who are saying that they want to receive messages from you directly via their mobile device, how do you ensure that they're going to stay with you for the long term and that you're providing value to them as well? So knowing that there's such a high value to these customers, you want to pay it forward and make sure that you're providing the value to them too.
Anna, I know your SMS program is still fairly young. Do you have anything to add?
Not really. I think you guys have covered most of that. The only thing about deliverability for what I see is it's a very different approach, and SMS is a very punctual, very direct, very efficient communication. So your response will be pretty immediate within the next few hours or few days of when you send your campaign. As far as email, it's a completely different channel. It's a more of the user is going actively to read their emails, right? Your customers are reading the emails, are sorting through emails. You have to stand out. It's not invasive. Yeah, I'm not talking to you guys right here and I get a ding from my phone that I'm getting an SMS from a brand. So it's a completely different approach. I think both of them are good channels, and it makes sense to communicate on both. I think that in a way, with so much email going on from all these brands, I think it's hard to break through the noise sometime on email. Therefore, your email, it almost becomes an awareness play. It's not that much different anymore than going through your feed on social and seeing some message from a brand and say, okay, top of mind. I got an email from Fridays. I know they have something going on right now for Easter. Okay. And then eventually you're like, okay, where are we going for Easter? Okay, I know that there's some, off-premise or type of to-go big offer for your Easter celebration. So it's not it doesn't require an immediate action, or it doesn't promote an immediate action as much as SMS. So I think that the conversion will always be different, and your audience will be different. So I think that that's why it's so important to have a balance on your SMS messages and have something really important, really good to say, as opposed on email that it's a little bit, the cadence is more frequent and it could be more of a little bit of everything.
Thank you. We've had a number of questions come in about tracking metrics in terms of like open rates and how you tie an in-store purchase back to an SMS message. Perhaps Greg, you can address that.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So I can point back to this particular campaign where we were using a mobile wallet tied with SMS. So essentially a mobile wallet object that was sent via text. So, if you're not familiar with mobile wallet, it's essentially, something that you would install on your mobile device. It's often used for boarding passes for planes or gym memberships, or, your Starbucks gift card or a rewards card. But we're able to create wallet objects that we then send via SMS for certain campaigns, whether it be, or it could be a welcome offer as an incentive, for example. So when you first join a list, you might get, here's $5 off or 25% off or whatever it might be. So for some campaigns where we're sending wallet offers, because these coupon codes used are specific to this particular campaign, the customer is able to track redemption of these wallet offers, whether they're redeemed online or if they're redeemed in store. And then we're able to say, okay, we know that we sent these wallet offers via the SMS program. They've been redeemed in store, so we can track back that revenue generated back to knowing that that was sent via the SMS channel. That's a really good example of where we've been able to track the in-store. Other times it might vary, you know, if you're maybe sending a code via a message that people might bring into the store, or any other type of coupon. That's really the best way to track that redemption. Oftentimes, you know, if we're sending links in an SMS message and it's often a call to action to click the link and buy there, that wouldn't necessarily translate to an in-store experience. But what we can say is we can certainly see, you know, if you're able to track your customers, or if you have an ecosystem within your organization where you're able to tie back, whether it be a loyalty number or even just a customer ID based on their phone number that you might already have in your CRM system. If you know that customer's phone number and you know they're a loyalty member and they're spending in the store, and you can tie them back to being on your SMS list, you could make the correlation that, oh, because they're receiving these SMS messages and they're shopping in store, you know, we can tie back that revenue generated as proving more value of the channel. Hopefully that helps explain a little bit convoluted, but there's a lot of ways that you can track that, really depending on the program itself, what you're offering, and you know what data you have collected.
Yeah, Anna, do you have anything to add about the ways in which TGI Fridays is tracking information?
Yeah, so we definitely, after we launched the program, it was very standalone and we were not really merging it with the rest of our data. We're now in the walk type of phase where we are understanding what are those customers also doing with us and trying to understand their behavior. For example, we realized that 20 to 22% of the customers in SMS are also in our loyalty program or in our marketing subscription email list. So that is interesting to understand, because then we can, like I said before, communicate to them in other channels, and also know what they are seeing in other channels, since we know them. The other piece to it is that we determine by the amount of people that are engaged opening SMS promotions or campaigns, we determine that a lot of them are actually coming into store, because we have a lot of engaged people that don't necessarily match the ordering process online. So we're able to also match up our online purchasing data with our SMS base and understand, you know, who's shopping online and who's really more interested in understanding what is going on in store. So that has been very enlightening for us, because we're able now to segment between, you know, more in-store dining messages for SMS users than online ordering users in SMS. So as far as tracking as well, we try to separate our campaigns on SMS. So for example, if we have we tag everything accordingly, so we know who's coming from SMS and what are they doing in our site. But when that wasn't possible, we were creating separate codes in SMS, just so we could understand what really were doing those users, or what purchases were doing those users specifically, and identify those isolated by channel. Now we have improved our tagging strategy, so now we're able to identify, out of all the online orderings that we're seeing, who comes from SMS, who comes from paid search, who comes from social, email, etc.
I think that leads into one of the questions that we've gotten online about the difference between using SMS and MMS, and how you might test or implement both in your strategy.
We tested a lot during the first 3 months of the program, understanding different things, right? Understanding, sending the same, splitting an audience and sending an SMS versus an MMS, measuring results, measuring open rate, and measuring conversion ultimately. What we learned so far is that SMS versus MMS is not that, MMS versus SMS is not that much efficient. It definitely causes more engagement. The engagement is higher, but not necessarily the conversion is higher. Your purchases may not be that much higher to justify the higher price of your MMS campaigns. So what we have strategically planned our calendar to allocate SMS campaigns when there are things that we just can say versus things that we need to show. So for example, we have a bounce back coming. If you come to store, you get a bounce back for 20% off on your next visit. Perhaps we don't need a creative or an image to show that. It's good enough to say what we learn is that we're gonna get pretty much the same results if we just say it than if we put it in a picture. However, if we have a very innovative hamburger that has fries or mac and cheese inside, then we may want to show that because we want to entice our users and our customers to come and try that new product. So we're trying to be very strategic on when we use MMS to really justify the cost of those messages versus SMS.
And Greg, what have you seen with other customers with respect to MMS versus SMS and some A/B testing on the platform?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would echo what Anna said. It's really about testing, and it's really about, determining when is the best time to use media, whether that be an image or GIF or video to send to your audience. Like she said, if it's something where it doesn't necessarily require a media, like an image, something very direct, then it makes sense. And it's really best, depending on the program, as all programs can vary in what type of business you are, organization, looking at, what's the engagement to SMS versus MMS, what's the conversion, as Anna mentioned, but also what makes the most sense from a content perspective, right? So, while for Fridays, it certainly would be really great to see, what new menu items there are with an image. Maybe with other retail companies, it might be great to see what new collections are coming out, or what other new products might be coming out. That's probably the best way to test it out, but also to every time maybe do some A/B testing of your audience to see, even with this new item, what's the engagement for the just direct basic text SMS versus the MMS. With the MMS, maybe even you want to test not just the image, but maybe you want to include some emojis or some other special characters in the message that you wouldn't necessarily include in SMS. And maybe as over time, with this crawl, walk, run approach, you might want to say, okay, now we've started to understand that this audience is going to resonate most with this type of messaging, or maybe we know that this segment of the audience is our engagers, the highest engagers. So let's send them more MMS because we know that they're going to engage with it more. Conversely, I've seen strategies where maybe we're not messaging the lower engaged people as often. So maybe every now and then sending them an MMS is kind of like we're still here and we still have something cool and new to offer you, and see how that engages. So I think it's really goes back to just this kind of ongoing testing and tweaking and modifying the program to see what resonates.
So there's been a question as well about including multiple languages in your messaging. I know, Greg, you can speak to that.
Yeah, definitely. I've been managing a lot of programs that are in Canada as well as the US. A lot of our customers have businesses there. And Canada requires multilingual English and French. I've also been working on new programs that will be including English and Spanish as well, and do also run a Spanish only program. And so, basically, it's really about determining from the get-go, of course, what language your customers want to receive their messaging in. So from the beginning, you want to make it as easy as possible to make sure that every message they're receiving is in the right language. So if you're using a keyword to really trigger the opt-in, make sure that that keyword is specific to the language. So have one for English, have one for French. Of course, in Canada, that's the requirement. But once you use that keyword, you'll be added to a list in your file or in your account that's really matched to this list of subscribers will only receive English, this one French, this one Spanish. And then just making sure that all of the messaging, from the opt-in flow messaging for the double opt-in to, of course, your actual what we call broadcast messages that you're sending ongoing to the list, to even things like the standard compliance language stuff. So the stop message when you text stop to opt out, the help message when you text help to get more information or customer service info. You want to make sure that you're using those words in those languages and that you're setting up the routing so that if someone texts stop or help in another language, they're also getting the same function to happen. And so it's also important to really analyze, at an individual level, what the engagement is for those different languages. And seeing, maybe what works for this set doesn't necessarily translate the offer to this set. So again, it's really just kind of looking at what works ongoing. But yeah, making sure, of course, that you've got all the bases covered for all the types of messages that your audience might receive.
Anna, are you doing any multi-language, or do you have plans to do any multi-language messaging?
No, right now that our base is US based, and our franchisees in the other countries for international are separate. So we're not doing any multi-language. What I would like to get to though in the States is to be able to offer SMS in Spanish, because we do have certain amount of customers and percentage of our customers that are Hispanic. So I think it will be, as a brand, it will be a good play to try to communicate to them in the correct language. However, for that, you need bandwidth, you need to gather those preferences. So you need a little bit more of a more sophisticated program that we do now have.
Okay, so shifting gears again back to acquisition, we have some people on the line who are new to SMS, and so there's some questions here about how did you get your acquisition campaign started, and what was the most successful way of getting new subscribers? And then along those same lines, do you also have to have a very strong email base to get started?
So I can speak from the side of the restaurant brand side. We started and we're still in only digital acquisition mode. For us, it's working. We do have plans to be in store and have some acquisition materials, so materials that encourage acquisition in store. However, we feel that that has to be well done, and we really wanted this program to run for at least 6 months before we go within the 4 walls and start promoting the program. We didn't know if it was something we were going to keep or anything, right? So we wanted to make sure it was a solid program before we go and print it and promote the program along with the new cheesecake or whatever that is. In June, we're planning to start that. We will have materials either on the table, so POP materials on the table that will encourage users to be part of the program. And we will also have certain posters in certain places that with QR codes that users easily can scan and join the program. It would all lead to basic landing page that the users go to sign up. That landing page can be enabled for any other channel. So for example, one time we tested how it worked, telling our email users that we have an SMS program, right? Because there's a lot to sort through from other brands. A lot of emails that come, so maybe some of them, and we did find that some of the users were willing to go and sign up for SMS. So we have done cross-functional channel promotion. It's not something obviously that you want to do all the time, because you don't want to tell your email users all the time, hey, it's time for SMS too. How many times can I bombard you with the same information, right? That's not cool, but it does work, and it is good to have your standalone sign up program or page to from time to time redirect from other sources. So for example, if a restaurant is having an event outside and they're giving flyers and they're giving a promotion, we can tell them, hey, include the QR code in that promotion. They are going to get 10% off. You always give something to acquire your users. You always have to give something in return. For us, it's a 10% off on the total order or the first order. That has been working for us. If that hadn't been working, we probably would have had to go and do a higher percentage. But it has. So we have left it at that. And if we had those materials for those events or alternative sources of customers, and we have that way to generate that acquisition, we would be able to use it anytime we want. So you have to think a little bit of outside the box, depending on your brand, of how else can you get those, those new users, because at the end of the day, you are giving them something valuable for them.
Greg, I'm sure you have something to add here as well. Working with multiple different brands.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and with acquisition, just like Anna mentioned, I agree. It's really key to have the incentive to encourage people to join the list, especially at the start of any new program, whether that be the 10% off or any kind of coupon code you can include or whatever you might have, whether it be a mobile wallet offer or just a coupon or something that's going to encourage them to initially join. That's really key for the acquisition piece. And you can promote that, whether that be, on your website via a web form where you might have, a form set up to trigger those SMS opt-ins, or you're using a keyword that you can promote, maybe different keywords to promote on digital channels versus social media or in store or, on menus. You can promote your keyword and call to action anywhere. And using different keywords that you can also, that will enable you to track the source of the acquisition. So then you'll know every subscriber that used this keyword came from in-store, every subscriber who used this keyword came from social media, for example. But really promoting that incentive and seeing if that's like she mentioned, if it's working, if people are resonating with that, if that welcome offer that we often call it, is generating the acquisition. And then beyond that, I would say, there can be times where beyond just kind of the evergreen acquisition promotion, maybe there are some key moments or milestones where you might do these one-off campaigns. I had mentioned a couple earlier in the conversation. I'll give you an example. We had a customer who ran a small campaign where they had a unique offer for a few days. And that offer was only going to be for that time period. But leading up to that campaign, for about a week or two before, they were promoting the fact that this offer was coming up to generate new acquisition. So while they were using all of their existing acquisition channels and calls to action, they really ramped it up, whether it be an email or on site or just with a new unique keyword. And for all the new users, they would receive the standard welcome offer with a message that would say, here's a welcome offer to use in the meantime. Watch out for this even bigger offer that's coming. That's the reason you signed up initially. And then at the same time, giving that same offer to your existing subscribers. So there's ways to, generate the acquisition ongoing, but also find ways to maybe have little bumps in your acquisition while also continuing to provide more, incentive for your existing subscribers to stay long term.
So another one of the questions that has come in is about having a very successful campaign and having a very large number of subscribers. I'm wondering, Anna, if you can speak a little bit about how having this new program and it having been very successful, if that has changed any of your like departmental needs or staffing needs, or like how are you handling all of the new success?
So that's a great question. That was one of my concerns when we started launching this program, right? I run a really lean team and I was concerned that we were not gonna be able to keep up. However, the advantage of SMS, as direct as it may be, is that you cannot do too much of it. If you do too much of it, you're gonna exhaust your base and they are gonna opt out. I will definitely opt out from anybody who sends me more than one message a week at the most, and preferably one message every 2 or 3 weeks, right? So when we have something important to say, we definitely say it a little bit more often than once a month. But if we don't have anything new to say and any reason to really bring those users back to our stores, then we kind of leave SMS alone. Going back to your question sorry, I confused your question now with another question that is coming from what was your question again, Christina?
I was just asking if the success of your program had affected your staffing in any way.
Yeah, no, it hasn't. I like I said, it's a very sporadic, if you will, campaign. We don't need creative all the time because we're not using MMS constantly. We're very strategic with that. So we have been able to manage from the campaign side. It hasn't been a big lift or a big effort or a big impact to my team. However, I have to say from the development side, it is something that you have to consider because you do need your development team to integrate that data into the rest of your data. You may need, a data analyst or a development support to query and link that data together with the rest of your data. And then we are definitely quoting what it will take us to bring and consolidate that data with the rest of our data in our CRM system. So from the investment standpoint, you definitely have to, I definitely encourage brands to make sure that you have certain budget to integrate your SMS channel with the rest of your channels in your CRM or marketing platform. From the everyday run aspect, I think is a pretty low maintenance channel.
Greg, I'm wondering if you can add a little bit about other customers and whether or not they are able to manage large lists with a lean team. And then maybe add after that some thoughts on just how integrating with ecosystems, marketing ecosystems.
Sure. Yeah. And it's, as Anna mentioned, it's really key to not overwhelm your subscribers, but at the same time, of course, you want to make sure that your team is able to manage the program as well. So it's really about being able to maintain a content calendar, planning ahead, really knowing what across the board for your organization or business, what other marketing initiatives or campaigns you have going on that you can tie SMS into, so that you're incorporating that as part of your larger strategy. Our customers generally, they'll know what other initiatives they're working on, and they'll be working across teams. Oftentimes the people that we're working with directly who are managing the SMS channel are often, also managing email or app or marketing in general. And so they'll kind of have oversight as to what's going on across the board. I work a lot with customers who maybe want to have us help directly schedule and manage the actual process of the messaging. Other customers will have the capability to self service and really do it themselves. It really depends on, again, the organization and their own internal capabilities. Sorry, what was the second part of the question?
I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about like integrating SMS into a larger ecosystem.
Yeah, definitely. So that's often a big topic that comes up. It's as you're starting a new channel, especially if you have an existing CRM system, you want to be capturing the data that you're collecting there. Or perhaps even what I'm working with some other customers on right now is being able to pass maybe, existing customer or loyalty data that they already have in a CRM and passing that back to us on the SMS side. So, as we're collecting data, again, we collect a lot of data by default just from the phone number alone. But from what we talked about earlier, we can collect other pieces of information, and we can integrate with CRM systems to be able to pass that data back and forth. At Upland, we have APIs that we use for our SMS platform. We can also integrate with other customers' APIs, whether that be for their CRM or another system that they might want to store this data in. And passing this data back and forth allows not only the organization to understand more about their SMS subscribers, but can also provide that data to us that we can use on the SMS side for better targeting and segmentation. So, it really is case by case and depends on the platform, but we have a lot of experience being able to integrate and work with customers on that side.
And to add to that, just for a moment, I think one of the things in my run stage is going to be able to trigger those SMS campaigns, not only to SMS, but to all my digital channels under the same umbrella from my CRM system, right? So right now it's on a standalone channel. Second step is to integrate it with the rest of your data to understand that. The last step is to be able to really have an overall arching campaign and then just disseminate your campaigns through all these different channels at different times, depending on what channel you're sending your campaigns to. This answers a little bit the question on the multi-channel question, what content aligns best for SMS, in-app messaging, and push versus email. I think that if you have a good campaign and something good to talk about and an overarching campaign, I think your campaign has to go everywhere. Strategically talking about it, strategically following up the message, strategically thinking about the customer journey and making sure you're not saying one thing about, one campaign or offer on one channel, and then 10 minutes later you send a push notification about something completely different, right? You as a marketer, you have to think about the journey and the messaging that your users are going to get in different channels, and try to make sure that that is consistent across, just to get your campaigns to resonate better and ultimately bring your customers for that reason. And that's why, you know, multi-channel attribution is the holy grail of marketing, because that's ultimately what causes a visit or a purchase for many of us, right? And it's hard to calculate, and you know, we as marketers do as much as we can do to understand what is that. But that is why I think when it comes to messaging, what is good to send to different channels? Yes, some things, you know, in SMS you have to be more strategic, more specific, more innovative. But ultimately, I think being cohesive across all your channels is what matters.
That's great. Thanks for jumping in, Anna. We have a couple of questions that sort of all tie together, I think, to how someone would get started. I know, Greg, you mentioned the double opt-in path, and Anna, you mentioned making sure that you have budget to, you know, integrate with development and maybe an analyst. And I'm wondering maybe if you can both give us some perspective, like from the customer side, some things to consider if you're just getting started, and then Greg, maybe from, you know, the technical or the platform side, you know, the regulations and whatnot. Anna, do you want to go first?
Sure. So from my side, some of the things that I consider was, you know, finding a good partner that fits your bill. There are a lot of, you know, great companies out there doing SMS and MMS, but really, you know, what are your needs and what is the value proposition for all of them? So I think that's really important. We took our time reviewing partners and talking to different partners about it. We also consider a partner based on whether they could easily integrate in the rest of our data and our digital properties, right? For me, it was important to not have a big lift just to launch a channel that we didn't know how it was going to perform. So somebody who would be able to provide an easy way, call it a widget, call it a model, in your properties to see how this was going to work was important for me. Your team bandwidth, if your team is saturated to the top and working until 10 o'clock every day, probably not a great idea to bring a new channel to them. Not only because of the channel execution, but also from the reporting standpoint. You have a new channel, you're communicating to them, you want to know how successful are those campaigns, you want to integrate that reporting with the rest of your reporting, so you're just adding more. So bandwidth is something to consider, even though it's not a huge lift with SMS. Creative support. We didn't know if we were gonna need, you know, we need copy, we need approved copy, branded in the tone of the brand. So we wanted to make sure we have support on the creative side to get that wow factor for this channel and really produce that engagement that we were looking for. And then ultimately, what are your abilities to integrate it? Like I said before, with the rest of your platform, you know, will you be able to integrate it, or is something that you're definitely not going to be able to do and you're just going to have to manage that channel standalone? So all those things were factors for us to decide to launch the channel and to really try how it will work, and then to select your partner of preference.
Yeah, that's great. And you know, to add to that, kind of once you kind of have an idea of the type of program you're going to do and really your bandwidth and the partner that you're going to work with, you know, you want to determine the type of SMS program you're looking to do. Is it marketing? Is it transactional? What are you going to be offering your subscribers? What types of messages are you sending? And once you have an idea of that at a high level, that's when you can really start on the provisioning process to acquire a short code. So the short code is the number that you'll be using, usually 5 or 6 digits that you know you'll reserve just for your program. That's kind of the number that will be saved to people's phones, that the messages they'll receive. And that provisioning process really goes through an aggregator that works directly with the mobile carriers. So the major carriers, the T-Mobiles, Verizons, you know, Sprints, at least here in the US, and we also do it in Canada and other markets. Every market has their own set of regulations, but you want to go through that regulatory process, providing what, you know, your standard default opt-in messaging will be, making sure that it's TCPA compliant. So per those, regulations, just including things like what is your double opt-in language for the reply why, to ensure that, you're showing directly how people are going to be opting into your messaging program, including pretty standard things like your stop message, the message that people receive when they want to opt out, the help messaging, having those messages ready for review by the carriers, and really so that they understand the type of program that you're looking to do on a particular short code that you're provisioning, and what that default kind of standard compliance messaging will be. That will go through a review process that does take several weeks. Once the carriers review and approve and say you're good to go, you have your live shortcode. That's when you can really start to focus on your acquisition plan. And that's really, while that process is happening of getting the shortcode approved, that's when you have the opportunity to really start to think about what is our acquisition strategy? Where are we going? What keywords or opt-in web forms do we want to be using? What is the incentive that we're going to be providing? Having that all ready, and then when you're really ready to launch, going to launch, to start growing your list. And then I would say, as you start to grow the list, determine what the frequency of the messaging will be. And then it's the crawl, walk, run approach, right? It's that seeing the messaging, how it's resonating, tweaking it over time.
We have time for one more question there, Scott. I see you've popped back on.
That's okay. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt too much. We've got some time there, so go ahead.
Okay, I thought we could use these last couple of minutes to address some really specific questions. For instance, I know this is a little bit outside of your bandwidth there, Anna, but maybe Greg can talk to a little bit about the different industries that are applicable to SMS. Specifically, do you have any use cases for maybe B2C versus B2B?
Yeah, definitely. So we work across a variety of industries. I'm personally working directly with a lot of retail and restaurant customers, but also a lot of nonprofit organizations. From a B2B level, there's a couple different ways that it could be used. Whether it's maybe it's employee communications, or maybe maybe it's not necessarily offers. Maybe it's more information about changes or upcoming. If you're a software company, for example, maybe you're sending messages to your customers about or other kind of vendors in the space, or partners in the space, about new products or new acquisitions or new services that you're providing. There's a lot of use cases, and it's really about determining what your overall goal is with the messaging, who you want to try to reach out to, and then how you're going to measure that is really the key.
There's also a question here about using paid search for acquisition. I don't know, Anna, have you employed any tactics in that arena?
We haven't. It's a great idea, actually. I saw the question and it triggered. No, we haven't. Just because with COVID and the funds and the allocation of funds that we have for campaigns in paid search, those are limited. So it wouldn't be so natural to include that or to get buy-in on investing on that. So I think that we will, as far as channels go, we'll go within the four walls first and see how that promotes, how that works, before we try other channels like paid search.
Greg, do you know of any customers who are using a paid search or potentially, a social media influencer?
Definitely social media. Yeah, there's promotion there for the keywords. It really varies in terms of influencers. Nothing comes to mind, but again, it varies by industry or program, or even at a campaign level, right? So there may be opportunities where if you're wanting to generate acquisition for a particular campaign or offer, that's where paid search or even more social promotion would make sense. But from an evergreen perspective too, I think, it's really depending on your budget, your strategy, and the channels that you're looking to reach out to people to join the list.
Right, I don't think we have any time left for for any additional questions. I think I'll have to turn it back over to Scott.
Thanks, Christina. I know, sorry to cut things short. I always feel so bad jumping in at the end here on these discussions. I feel like they could always go for 15, 20 minutes longer. So yeah, that does wrap up today's webinar, unfortunately. I know we did cover a lot of ground there, discuss some incredibly important topics, a lot of fantastic insight from our panelists, and also a lot of great engagement and questions from our audience. So really appreciate everyone's input today. I'd like to take a brief moment to thank our pair of fantastic panelists today, Anna and Greg, for lending us their time and expertise throughout today's discussion. And also a big thank you to our moderator, Christina, who done a fantastic job of guiding us through today's discussion. And also, finally, thanks to today's sponsors, Upland, for working with us to create this hugely successful webinar. If you would like to check out what they have to offer and how it can benefit your business and your mobile messaging strategy, head over to www.uplandsoftware.com or look out for more details attached alongside the recordings of today's webinar. And last but not least, thank you to each one of you who have joined us today live or are watching in the recorded future. I hope you enjoyed the discussion and gained some really actionable takeaways. We did receive a large number of questions, and I will pass those on to the panelists to see if there are any answers we can sort of pick up that we missed. Up next from us on the Reuters event side, April 1st, we're back for another webinar focused on delivering the next generation of CX, which features Microsoft, MasterCard and Google. And then following that closely on April 7th, we're hosting another webinar entitled Customer Engagement Redefined, Automation, Messaging and Beyond. More details on this will be released in the coming days, and both are available to sign up for now. So if you're interested, we'd love to have you back. But for now, thank you all from all of us at Reuters Events and from Christina, Anna and Greg. We hope to welcome you back soon, and I hope everyone has a great day.